Hello and welcome to this course on setting up a consultancy. Whilst this course is aimed at consultancy, it should also be mentioned that it can be applied to freelancers or anybody in that category of being able to work from home and be able to provide services to other companies and businesses and individuals alike. From a remote perspective. So let's say, for example, you might be an architect, or you might be a graphic designer, or you could in fact be a business consultant. And that's the one we're going to track through as we go through this course. Just be aware that what you learn here can be applied to multiple areas, not just pure business consulting. We can add products in and sell products as well as services. But this unit is really focused on how to provide services, and you'll find that once you get to the tail end of this course, you'll see that adding products into this environment is pretty straightforward as well. So let's get started. The first thing we really need to do is log into our database, and if you haven't already logged in yet, I'll just log out, and we'll log in as admin, and the password is admin. So brand new fresh database, nothing's happened on this machine or in this database, and so we really need to change that username and password to something a lot more secure. I don't recommend saving passwords into the browser either, but yeah, we'll ignore that for the moment. So the first thing we really need to do before we do anything, and it's probably a matter of urgency, is let's go and change the password. So we click on the four buttons up the top, the four squares I should say, which is our main menu, and we go down to settings, and from the general we automatically land on the general settings, and from here we can go to manage users. Click on manage users, and we see we've got one user that's active on the system at the moment. If we open up that user account, we can see the name's administrator, email address is admin, and we can reset the password or send the password reset instructions, and it'll be whatever email address is sent here. Obviously this one won't work, being not a real email address, but let's get that fixed. So the first thing we need to do is edit this, and our consultant's name is Morgan. Kinlay, and his email address is morgan@example.com. So we use example.com because it's a known test email address, and therefore if anything does get out on the internet, it won't go anywhere because people know that these are just for testing purposes only. We'll leave all the settings for the moment. In a previous lesson, you should have been introduced to some of those settings and where you can go to change them. As we go through this course, we will be delving into the settings where it's relevant. So we won't be going to every little detail about things, but we will cover the most important features that you'll need to know. So now I've changed the email address. You'll notice that if I save this, I'll immediately get logged out. And it says your session has expired. Click OK to refresh the page, and we did get kicked out. So now we've got to log in with our new email address, morgan@example.com, and that's ready to go. And remember, we haven't changed the password yet, so it's still the same, admin. And I'll log in again. So we're partially secure now because we've at least got a different email address, but we really do need to change that password. So if I go and click on the action button, because we come back straight into that place we left, so we'll go into the action and then straight down to change password, and Morgan's email address is there, so I can go and type in a new password. Feel free to change it to whatever password you like. I'm using a fairly generic sort of password because I know I'm in a protected environment, but in real life you want to make this a good secure password, and try and resist the urge to write down somewhere. Maybe use a good tool like a password safe where you can clip all your passwords safe. But let's get on with this. Let's change this password, and it logs me out again because I've also changed that password and username. Morgan at example.com, and put in my new password and log in. Don't save. I should say never for this site, but I'll leave that for a moment. And this is good. So now the admin user, the most powerful user on the system, has a fairly secure password and has a different email address. So I'm feeling fairly protected now. From this point onwards, it will be difficult for a hacker to get in. And it's never impossible, but you do try and make it as difficult as you can for people to break into your systems. You'll notice that from here, I'll take a bit more time because I'm not in so much of a rush because we've secured our environment. But you can send a password reset if anybody ever does forget their password. If you've got multiple users on the system and you as the administrator need to help them out because they've forgotten their password or they've been locked out or something, so you can send a password reset there. You can also do a change password where you can change it immediately for them as well. We've got some other features here which I think we've talked about in a previous lesson, but you can archive a user, you can duplicate a user, you can delete a user, you can change their password, you can assign tasks to them, and you can turn on what they call two-factor authentication, or sometimes called multi-factor authentication. So that's it's a little bit outside the scope of what we're talking about today because it actually requires third-party apps on telephones and things like that, and that's a little bit outside the scope of the course. And then down the bottom we do have the password reset options. If you do set up multiple users on your system, just be aware you may need to come in here and turn on and off some of the access to some of the modules that have been installed. But we'll get into some of that later. I've got my preferences here about what my language is and what time zone I'm in, so you can feel free to change those. Now this is on a user by user basis, so if I've got people in the east, let's say Victoria, and I've also got people in Western Australia, then the system's smart enough to know the time differentials there. So if you've ever got appointments set or that kind of thing, it will make those allowances for daylight savings times or not in different time zones. The other thing is, this is where I can also go and turn on the two-factor authentication. As I said, you do need a third-party software enabled to make that work. I'll go back to the access rights, and from here we can also change the password. Change the image if we want to give Morgan an image. We need to go into edit mode, and then we can click the little pencil and go find our image. That's the one I'll be using later on. Now that's done, we'll save that. And if we go back to users, there's a list of all the users, and now we can see that the login's changed and we've got the right name there rather than administrator. It can be best practice too if you like to have an administrator account, then also have a daily user account, and this is where you'd have less privileges on the system. So I'll just go back in there for a sec. You may decide to turn off the administration settings just in case someone broke in with your user account. If they've got access to this, they've got access to everything. But if you've set up a user account, a second user account that doesn't have this access, and that's the one you use day to day, you've got no fear of someone breaking in with that everyday account and changing things and so forth. But as I said, that's probably a little bit more outside the scope. Let's go back to our general settings. So that's user sorted. Let's get this company or business information out of the way next. So same page, we're still on general settings. We'll go to manage companies, And here's the default company that comes on the system when you install it. So what we'll do is we'll edit this one. And we'll give it a name. McKinley Consulting. And they are in 123 High Street, Marlow, and it's in Victoria. I don't know whether there is a High Street or not in Marlow. I just made it up, but I probably should have checked that before. But nevertheless, 3888. So that's the postcode setup. Email address. So this is where you being a consultant and pretty much a sole trader, things you've probably got the same email address. Although what you might do when you set up your business is set up what they call aliases. So you might have an alias for your email address that's maybe sales, or it might be info at. And what that does is it appears as if you've got multiple email addresses, but at the end of the day, it just all goes to the one email address. But that can be very handy for given the perception that your business is much larger than it really is. So in here, I might put in info at example.com, and the fingers aren't working today. I can put in my web address here, so it might be McKinleyConsulting.com.au or something like that, for example. And phone numbers, you might have a 1-800 123 456, and you could put your mobile in there as well. Your tax ID, so your company registry, you can put in your ABN if you've got that there. So it might be 25846 and 987. Again, I just made that number up, so if it happens to be a real one, I'm not even sure whether there's enough digits there. No, I think I'm short. I think I need another set of digits. Let me put in 888. I just got that from the postcode. Okay, so now we've got our ABN in there as well. It's all looking pretty good, but let me just go and add a logo now. And I've already got this on my desktop. This is a logo I created for this company. I thought it looked pretty good, so why not? Okay, so now I've got this pretty much set up. I think that's just about all I want to do here. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'll save. And that's great, looking good. Great. Let me go back to our settings again. Now I've got this information you see is being reflected here in under the companies, and I can go back in and manage those companies if I want. The reason I can actually have multiple companies in the one database, but that's well and truly quite an advanced feature and would need a lot more discussion. But just be aware that if you do have multiple companies, you absolutely can use the same instance of the database if you choose to. The next thing we want to do, if we scroll down just a little bit, is document layout. So we want to get that out of the way too. These are just the basic things you do when you first install a new database, and this is starting from absolute scratch. So let's configure this layout. Now you'll notice the first thing you should notice here is that because we've got the logo in here, it's pulled out the colours from the logo, and you might notice that some of these colours that are used in the preview of this particular invoice have picked up those colours and have been colour coded accordingly so that everything kind of matches and looks good. You'll notice that the address is in here. And I've also got some information down the bottom here, which goes into this line down the bottom as a footer. And it's going to be an A4 layout, which is standard in Australia, and those sorts of things. I can change the layout a little bit. I've got a few choices here. I can go with light or the boxed or the bold, and you'll notice that the preview's changing as I go through. All of them look really good, I think. There's I don't particularly have a preference over one or the other, but I'll stick to light for the sake of this exercise. Other things you might want to do here is, if you only deal in Australia, maybe you just don't need Australia in your company details there, so that appears here, and you might think, well, of course I'm going to be in Australia, so you can get rid of it. And when you notice I'm still in that company details, it hasn't updated this because I haven't moved away from that field yet. But if I click away, it now updates the preview. One of the other things I do think is a little bit lacking is the fact that it does not put in the ABN. So you might choose to then put in, so what I'll do is put in ABN, and I'm not going to remember that number, but I knew it started off with 25, I think. I'm really just going to put in some random numbers there because I can't remember what I put in. It did end in AAA, didn't it? As I say, this is just a playground anyway, so if you don't get things perfect, it's not a big deal. Let's click away again, just see if this updates, and sure enough it does. It's great. So now I've got my ABN in there as well. So this is a preview of an invoice. So if I was to send this to someone, there's some sample data in here that they just randomly generate some information. Well, not randomly. It's some demonstration data that they put in there just so you can see what it looks like. You might notice that there's no bank details here. So how do I pay? If I get this invoice, how does my customer pay me? Well, what we can do, or what I'd like to do, what I'll do is if I push enter, it puts a bit of a space between the two of them. And so let me go back, and I'll hold shift down and push enter, and now it puts me on the very next line. So it's still part of the same block, if you like. It's in the same paragraph. And what I'll do here is I'll put in BSB, and I'm going to put in 123-456, and I'm going to put a space and then account, and a colon, and then I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's good. I've got that in there now, so you can see what it's done here. It's got those with the 1-800 number, the contact information. It's got all the good contact stuff there, but now it's also got the BSB straight under it. Still not completely happy with that though. What about if we make that bold? So what I can do is highlight that, and you'll notice this pop-up comes up, and we can click B for bold there, and then maybe I want to do the same with this. Okay, now we'll keep your eye on this and we'll click away, and that looks better already. Really hard to see. If you download the preview, you can then zoom in and just really get a good look at what it looks like, but you can actually tell from this image that does look better with the bolding on there as well. So that's our layout. I think we're pretty happy with that. What we haven't got is a tagline. I haven't really thought of a tagline. What can I say? So great. Oh no. The best consultancy in Marlow or something. I'm sure you could probably come up with a better tagline than that, but why not? And let's see what this does when we click away. It sticks it up there. Okay, that's not too bad. That looks pretty good. Again, you probably want to get some marketing people to give you a better tagline if you haven't got one already. But for the sake of the exercise, I think it's showing that that's how that works. Now, just before I leave here, it might be worth just another little check to see how, now we've got all our information in here, how does it look on the other layouts? That doesn't look too bad. I quite like that. And what about the bold one? Yeah, that's got the address information and company details over here, logo over there. That I like that down the bottom. That looks really good. Maybe the tagline's a bit big, but that's okay. Well, let's see what the stripe one looks like. Yeah, that's pretty clean, but might be lacking a little bit. I like the bold one because I like this information down in the footer there. I like the separation. Boxed again. I like this too because it's clean. We've got the light layout there, which is one we're working with. I think I'll just leave it with the light layout, but you can choose the one you prefer. I can actually change fonts and select backgrounds too if I want, but for the sake of this, I'll just keep it clean, and we'll save that. So now we've updated our user, so it's something a bit more secure. We've set up our business information, and we've set up our document layout. We've added our logo in, and that logo's been used to then help with the colorization of our invoices. And it's not just invoices too. This is a document layout. This will be purchase orders, or it'll be whatever correspondence we want to get in. It will try and use that wherever possible. It becomes what we saw as a template of the invoice, but it could be purchase orders or it could be other things as well. So that's pretty good. And so I think from that high level that the business details and user details are now good enough for Morgan to kick off his business. But we've still got a little bit of work to do with the setup. So the first thing we need to do is go into project. We're still in the settings area here, so we're not looking at project, the application, we're looking at the settings for project. And the first thing I really want to turn on is track task logs. So you'll see what it says here, track time spent on projects and tasks. That is what I want to do. There's a lot of other features here I can turn on, but for the moment we just want to do this because we do want to use timesheets. That will be used quite a bit. But you can be, so be aware, you can do things like profitability analysis, some of those reports, some customer ratings. So if you want to get your customers to give you ratings on some of the work you do, you can turn that on. We can turn on subtasks, although I recommend to only turn that on if you're actually going to use them, because subtasks can get a little confusing, I find. But it's probably something that you might want to turn on 6 or 12 months down the track when you really start mastering this. Task dependency just means that we can say that one task can't be started until the previous one finishes. We'll leave that off for the moment. As I said, that might be something we touch at a bit more later on, possibly. Collaborative pad is something that a feature that can be turned on so that customers can interact with you through essentially a notepad type environment where details can be updated and so forth and information exchanged. It just gets away from sending lots and lots of emails backwards and forwards if you're working off the same document. Again, I'll leave that off for the moment. Recurring tasks. So if you do have tasks that become recurring, i.e. you do it every month, you do it every week, you do it every whatever, we can turn that on. Probably more relevant in the area where you're doing projects that require, let's say, maintenance or something like that. So you've got a maintenance schedule or something that's scheduled in there for periodics. You can, although you might want to turn it on for recurring project meetings with your customers or something. And project stages is there's a couple of different ways to do stages, but this is just one of the features. So it sets up a staged environment for your projects. Let's have a look at those sorts of things later on, but we do want to turn on this task log, and you'll notice that here I've got some modules that are installed. I've got sales that's installed, accounting installed, and projects installed. I'll turn this on and save the settings. That's getting saved right now. What this is actually doing is installing some stuff in the background to enable this feature. And it's going to refresh, and bingo, I've now got timesheets and I've got employees that we didn't have before. So it's installed a couple of extra modules for us. just by turning that feature on. So if we go back, turn that feature on, I'll get timesheets, so we can manage our timesheets. So we'll go through this a little bit. So the time used to record your timesheets, we generally do it by hours. You can do it by days if you only work in days and you don't break it down in hours. But we'll see how we can deal with that in a better way later on. We'll just leave that for hours. And time billing, we can configure self-services and invoices and invoice time spent. We will be doing that, but we won't be configuring it here. We'll be configuring it through another place. And so we'll come back to that later on. These ones that have enterprise written beside them are only available in the enterprise version of this software. That being said, the enterprise version is a reasonable sort of cost, and what we're trying to do is with any new business, with any new startup, we want to start off with as lean as we can to make sure that we are making a profit, and then as we build our business up and add more people, that's when we may need some of these extra features that we're looking at here. But for the moment, this will do us fine, and we don't need any of these features today. Morgan's running his business as a sole proprietor, so he doesn't, he's going to manage his own timesheets through the app. The employee reminders, well, he's the one and only employee, and he'll be aware of what's going on. Manager reminders, well, again, Morgan's going to be working for himself, so that's a bit not very useful at this point. And we'll have a look at how we can manage our invoices later on as well. Anyway, let's keep going. Employees. So here's where we can set things like presence controls. So we can make sure that the employees are turning up. Again, not really relevant here. Skills management. So if we want to do some HR management things, we can turn those features on. Advanced presence control. So again, this is not really relevant for our little business here. Company work hours, default company schedule to manage your employees. We've got a couple of options here, standard 40, 35 and 38, and you can add extra ones if you like. We're going to leave it at 40 just because it's a nice round number. Most businesses work at 38 hours, but at the end of the day, it's up to Morgan how many hours he wants to work, because he is a sole proprietor working for himself. The number of hours he works per week is completely up to how he wants to run it. So we'll leave it at 40 for the moment. And so that's it. I'll just make sure we save those settings, and that's done. So we've now got a good company set up. And things are ready to go. We still haven't finished all of our configuration yet, but this is the first part of it. Setting up the company, getting the secure login, and getting the default document layout was probably the most important thing to get set up first. And then as we progress through the course, we'll be turning other bits and pieces on as we run through. So I will leave it at that, and I will see you on the next one.